Session 6. You guys doing good? Does it feel like it's going by quick? All right, that's the right answer. Just lie to me. So there we go. Okay, are there any questions on the material so far? Any questions? I don't want to leave anybody behind. Never leave a man behind. Yeah, Andrew? Just say the question, I'll repeat it for the So is there time to give out? Is there a good time to wait to give?
Not like wait to give.
This session will cover all that. This session we're going to zoom down and look at what does it actually look like for your personal finances. So again, we took a 30,000 foot view. What's it look like? We want to go from being fruitful to multiply, fill the earth. What are the what's the destination? That's where we're going. We're going to level 6 and 7. What are the mile markers along the way? I gave you some buckets you're going to need to fill up. But once you get to bucket number 4, we're going to see it's going to turn into a wealth-building machine once you begin investing in the heavens and the earth. That's what this session is going to be about. We're actually going to look at percentages of income, some suggested things. So we're actually going to zoom into your finances now. So you guys ready? I'm going to give you the secret to wealth. Are you guys ready? Are you ready for the secret to wealth? Here it is. There are no secrets. So I'm going to give you it in 2 sentences. These 2 sentences contain everything you will need for wealth. All the other books and literature, all this stuff, it all can fit into one of these categories. Are you ready? Here's the 2 sentences. Make more than you spend and invest the difference wisely. Partner with God and adapt wealth-building habits. That's it, gang. There's the secret to wealth. So let's look at what does this actually look like for your plan for prosperity. We looked at the big picture. Now let's look at you. Let's look at you, okay? So I want to focus on this first sentence here because it shows you how to manage your finances so that you're growing assets that produce cash flow, okay? So let's look at that first diagram, 6.1, widen the gap. Does everyone see widen the gap? Widen the gap. Okay, I want to look at... there's 3 ideas in that first sentence. Spend less than you make, earn more, and invest the gap wisely. Okay, do you guys see it? 6.1. It's the only diagram called 6.1. Keep looking, you'll eventually find it. It's probably the one right after the 30,000 foot one, okay? So, you've got earning. Okay, listen, look at me for a second. Here's what you're spending, here's what you're earning. The gap in between that is what you're going to use to create wealth. Okay, there has to be a gap. All right, so there's 3 ideas in here. Spend less than you make. Okay, earn more. So that's how spending less and earning more is how you widen the gap. And then you're going to have to invest that gap wisely. Okay, see where it says GAP on your page? I want to use that as an acronym. Here's what it stands for. Here's what this gap is going to do. Grow, amplify, and prosper. Just go ahead and write that in there. The G is for grow, the A is for amplify, and the P is for prosper. You are taking that gap and you're investing it to grow, amplify, and prosper your finances. Got it? Do you see how it's not that hard? Spend less, make more. That creates the gap. You're taking the gap, you're going to invest it wisely. We're going to talk about what all that means here in just a second. Spend less, okay? Spending less is limited. Okay, because you can only have your expenses go to 0. You know what I'm saying? There's a practical limit to, once you get to 0, you're done. There is no practical limit on your earnings. Well, Jim, I'm a school teacher. Well, there's a school teacher in Korea who got so good at it, he spent 57 hours a week preparing and 3 hours a week teaching. Began to put it online and sell it to people for, what was it? I think it was $5 for an hour. And he netted $4 million last year off of it. What did he do? He used God's power to create. He was adding massive value to 30 students, then began to broadcast it. There is no limits to this thing. I posted something about that on Facebook. Well, yeah, I work for the government. Well, yeah, I do this and this. Read The Millionaire Next Door. There's postal workers and teachers that die millionaires, and there's doctors and lawyers who die broke. The problem is not money. The difference is you. Everyone in this room will have more than enough money flow through their fingertips to be able to do everything I just said in the last session. The difference is you. If you're 20, you're probably not seeing it at this point, but you haven't reached your peak earning capacity at age 20 unless you're Britney Spears, all right? No knock on Britney, but I mean, she was probably at her peak right around there. Okay, there's no practical limit on the earning, okay? So I don't believe in being cheap just to be cheap, okay? And so like, there's a whole frugality movement, and some people just love being cheap. Here's what I believe. Spend on the things you love, and then ruthlessly hack away at the things you don't. So there's some books like The Latte Factor, and it shows you how if you quit buying coffees, take that. So the takeaway from that is, if I save some money and take the little bit and begin to put it aside and invest it over time, it grows big. That's the lesson of that. The lesson of that thing is not stop drinking coffee if you enjoy it, because you're going to have a horrible existence, and it's not going to be sustainable. God is not calling you to listen. If you're in massive debt, it's time to live a horrible existence for a little while. You need to embrace the pain. If you are in debt and you have nothing in savings, you are, as they say in Latin, maximus brochus. And you need to embrace a season of pain of living as little as you can, selling everything, working extra jobs to get to that bucket where you are not having the pressure of all that stuff. Okay, but that's not a lifestyle, that's a season. You seeing the difference? Spend on the things you love and then ruthlessly hack away on the things you don't. That's a lifestyle of not being wasteful of things, but still enjoying the things that bring you joy. The gap there is called delayed gratification. Okay, so I've got an appendix there for some ideas to spend less. I got an appendix on some ideas to earn more. Okay, so you can look at those. I just want you to get the big picture concepts here. If you haven't noticed, like all the homework stuff, it's actually going to take you steps into this stuff. Okay, it's not just like busy work. If you do these things, you'll actually be taking steps along the path here. So we looked at spend less, earn more, and that creates the gap. And now we're going to take the gap and we're going to invest it wisely. Okay, investing wisely means to preserve and multiply savings to build wealth. Okay, there's only 3 paths to wealth. There are only 3 things that you can put your money in that will build wealth. Okay, financial planners will typically tell you about 1. There's actually a 4th, it's commodities, but you have to actually physically hold oil and stuff like that. So we're just going to assume you're not going to do that. Okay, here they are. Paper assets, real estate, and business. Those are the 3 things that you're going to take your gap and you're going to invest it in that is going to multiply to produce assets. It's going to be an asset that's going to produce cash flow into your pocket. There's nothing else that will do it. Paper assets, stocks, bonds, exchange-traded funds, CDs, all that type of stuff there, okay? Let me just tell you this. Paper assets is rarely a wealth-building vehicle. There's only 2 groups of people that will grow wealthy from paper assets. And yet this is the only product that brokers will try to sell you because they get a commission off of that. Okay, that's probably not the only reason, it's just all they know. Okay, here's the only 2 groups of people that paper assets, the traditional route will do, is invest early and invest often. If you're 20 years old and you stick $1,000 a month away in a retirement account and it compounds over by the time, if you let it grow for 45 years or 30 years or 35 years, you will be wealthy. That will work for you. Or if you're 40 years old and you're willing to go the extreme frugality route and live off of 30% and invest 70% for 15 years, it will work for you. Problem is with that second scenario, if you've saved 0 up till 40, it's going to be very difficult for you to now begin to save 70. Okay, just being honest with you. Knock, knock on the tiny house. There we go. I almost did a comedy routine on tiny houses for this fall. I'm not going to do it. But yeah, I mean, just the composting toilets alone, there's plenty of material there. Okay, paper assets are a wealth parking vehicle for people who have made wealth either in business or in real estate. It's a place for them to park their wealth and then begin to grow wealth that they made somewhere else. Unless you're 20 years old and invest early, invest often, or you're willing to do the extreme frugality route. So I just want you to see the reality of it, okay? The paper assets route, it's more passive. Typically, someone will be investing it for you. You'll put it into a low-cost index fund that moves with the market, or you'll put it into a mutual fund or something like that, or somebody else. So the advantage of that is it's more passive. You don't have to do any of the work. The disadvantage of that is there's really no leverage to it. In business, you can leverage other people's time. You can leverage technology. You can do all these other things that multiply the effectiveness. Business has no limits to its increase. Paper assets is typically limited by math. There's typically, if it's tied to some type of index, most people don't purchase Google when it was $1. You know what I'm saying? Most people are not going to get rich that way. You need to understand, you're not going to beat the house. Okay, there's very few people. So paper assets, it has an advantage that it's more passive, but it's pretty limited in what it can do. As a model, you need to understand asset allocation and all that stuff. Business, there is no limits to its income. Real estate, you're limited by the number of down payments you can make. But again, there's great tax advantages of that. There's different leverage for all that type of thing. So look at diagram 6.2. This is half of your wealth building machine. So see those 3 gears? I want you to write on one of them paper assets. On another one, I want you to write real estate. And on another gear, I want you to write, what am I going to have you write? Business. Paper assets, business, real estate. Doesn't matter which 3. So this is half of your wealth building machine. This should typically be probably the unbeliever who's actually following this plan. They're creating a gap by spending less and earning more. They're taking that gap, and now they're putting it into these gears, into this wealth building machine of one of these 3 asset classes. Probably eventually, as your portfolio grows, you're probably going to have at least 2 of these in your business. Every person in here is unique with unique circumstances, so it's going to look different. But you're probably going to have at least 2 of these in your portfolio as you move forward, maybe if not all 3. But so it goes into this machine, and that's when you're going to go through the fruitful, multiply, and fill the earth subdue. So again, you're filling up the first 3 buckets with your gap. You're putting aside the emergency fund. You're doing your storehouse. You're paying off debts. But once you get to that level 4, where you're investing a minimum of 15%, that's your gap that's going into these gears, and that's what's going to take you through those 7 stages that we talked about. It's going to take you through the big picture. Is that making sense? What am I leaving out here? Here is something interesting. How to increase your investing. So there's something that it seemed like someone that won some Nobel Peace Prize came up with this. And here's the idea. They tested it in a Midwest company. It's called Save More Tomorrow. And these guys would be like, listen, we're already living on 100% of our paychecks. It was a bunch of factory workers. And they're like, listen, how about you guys just get to that 3%? Just 3% of your paycheck. Start there with 3%. Fine. So they did it. They get down to 3%. And they said, how about this? Whatever raise you're going to give 3% of that. So if you get a 5% raise, 3 of the 5% goes towards your future, and then you can live off the 2% increase. So these guys said, fine. So here's what happened. The results were amazing. After 5 years and 3 pay raises, the employees who thought they couldn't afford to save were setting aside just under 14% of their paychecks. 65% of them were actually saving an average of 19% of their salaries. So here's the idea, the Save More Tomorrow plan. Listen, I can only afford to give this much, but when I give a raise, I'm not going to increase my lifestyle in proportion to that raise. I'm going to take a portion of that, a large portion of that raise, and set it aside and create it as a gap. And I'm going to put it into a wealth building machine. Not so that I don't have to trust God someday, but that there's going to be a day when rivers are flowing out of me. Does that sound good to anyone here? All right, I want to zoom in and see how this works here. So again, 30,000-foot view. We saw the be fruitful, multiply. We zoomed down to the 7-mile markers there. I want to zoom down again and see how it works in your finances. So a mentor of mine, when his kids were little, he gave them each $10. He had 2 boys. And he said, what do you guys want to do with it? We want to go to the toy store, Daddy. And so they began to tell of all the things they wanted to buy, and it added up to the full $10. He's like, okay. So on the way to the toy store, he drives them through the roughest part of town. Boarded up houses, broken windows out of storefronts, trash everywhere. So they're driving down the street, and there's one neighborhood where the houses have been particularly hit by poverty. And he says to the boys, he says, when you grow up, do you want to live in that house? No, Daddy. He says, do you know who lives in that house? Poor people. Do you know who poor people are? Poor people are people who spend everything they make. And so he says, son, what do you want to do with that? Well, we don't know, Daddy. And so he said, what you're going to need to do is you need to not put all your money in your spend jar. You need to create other jars. And so Craig Hill came up with the 5-jar system. And so I gave you a little sample of that. Is wealthy people, they don't put all their money in one jar. They don't just spend everything and then take a little leftovers. They're giving, they're investing, and living on the rest. Most people spend everything. If they got a little extra, they'll throw it towards debt, pay the minimum payments, throw it in the bank account. But they're not thinking long term. And if they got if the preacher's extra good, they might leave a little tip in the offering plate. But most people aren't. But that's how poor people think: is what can I spend? Wealthy people think, what can I invest in? What can I do to create a greater gap to feed into this wealth building machine so that I can be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, and subdue? So Craig uses the 5 jars. He gave some suggested percentages to stand out. I like the idea of spreading things out like that. So I'm going to give you kind of my version of this. 2 Corinthians chapter 9, verses 6 through 11. I'm going to use a different picture here. This is Paul speaking. Again, the whole context of this is finances in chapters 8 and 9. The point is this: whoever sows sparingly will also reap sparingly. Speaking of sowing, he's taking money as like a seed. And whoever sows bountifully will also reap bountifully. Each one must give as he has decided in his heart, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for the Lord loves a cheerful giver. And God is able to make all grace abound to you, so that having all sufficiency in all things at all times you may abound in every good work. That should sound familiar by now. Then he quotes an Old Testament passage. As it is written, he has distributed freely. He has given to the poor. His righteousness endures forever. He who supplies seed to the sower and bread for food will supply and multiply your seed for sowing and increase the harvest of your righteousness. You will be enriched in every way, to be generous in every way, which through us will produce thanksgiving to God. Let me just talk about the harvest of righteousness again. In context there, you see that the harvest of righteousness is generosity. So here's the picture. We don't give to get as believers. We give to get so we can give away even more. I'm sowing a seed not to get something from God. I'm sowing a seed because he showed me how his kingdom works. And when I partner with him and by faith put something into his invisible realm, it comes back multiplied to me if I have something on the earth to multiply. It comes multiplied to me so that now I've grown the golden goose and now I can give away bigger golden eggs. So Christians, we do not, you're just talking about give to get. That's part of it. Give to get so I can give away even more. And if I'm not just saying it as a phrase, but I'm carrying it in my heart, then heaven is attracted to that. So let's look again at verse 10. He who supplies seed, I want you to underline that word seed. He who supplies seed to the sower and bread, underline that word bread, for food, will supply and multiply your seed for sowing and increase the harvest of your righteousness. This passage divides money into bread and seed. God provides bread to meet your needs. Okay, this is your cup that we talked about. Not your thimble, not your swimming pool. This is your cup. God provides bread to meet your needs, and your seed is so that resources can increase and multiply for greater generosity in the future. So bread is what you eat. It's how you spend money on yourself. It's your lifestyle. A seed is what you sow or plant for the future so that it multiplies and comes back to you. So we're going to talk more about seed in our final session here. So here's a powerful way to look at your finances. Every dollar that comes to you, you can ask this question: is this money bread or is this money seed? That is a powerful way to think, okay? Every dollar can be divided into 3 groups: give, invest, live on the rest. Say it with me. Give, invest, live on the rest. One more time. Give, invest, live on the rest. Every dollar can be divided into one of those 3 categories. Turn to this diagram 6.3. Diagram 6.3. And let's just go ahead and fill these things in. Priorities, okay? Giving equals seed. Write the word seed, and that's priority 1. You guys see where we're at? Giving equals seed. Investing equals seed. That's priority 2. Living equals bread. That's priority number 3. But it can also be summarized in a simple phrase: give, invest, live on the rest. What happened, gang? You're right. Oh, okay. My first priority is to be a giver. If God's not first in your finances, he's not first in your life. I had a dream, and in the dream, God came to me, and he said, I want my church back. And there is no area of my church that I can't point to and say, mine. Okay? That's true in your finances, gang. I hope that puts a little bit of the fear of the Lord in you. He is awesome. He delights in the prosperity of his servant. I mean, he is a good God. So why wouldn't you want to partner with that thing? When you're withholding, you're just giving into mammon. So my priority is to be a giver. Listen to, I love this verse, Proverbs 25:21 in the Passion Translation. Is your enemy hungry? Buy him lunch. Win him over with your kindness. Your surprising generosity will awaken his conscience, and God will reward you with favor. Your generosity can actually awaken the conscience of an unbeliever. So Mary and I had a situation this summer. Guy knocks in the door, I'm busy, so I kind of come there, and I'm not being like super friendly, but I'm not being super rude. And he's trying to sell a different cable company. And so I'm kind of blowing him off, and as I'm shutting the door, he gives me, they're trained to give you the objections. He gives me one that's actually pretty good. And so I don't know about you, I love being sold by somebody who's good. They're not trying to get money out of me, they're just a good salesman. They enjoy their job. I don't know, I just personally enjoy it. I love it. And so I'm like, all right, let's hear what you got. So he gives me a spiel, so I end up buying the cable from him. And so he's sitting at the kitchen table, and I'm realizing, oh my gosh, I've got this guy sitting here at my table in my home. What a great ministry opportunity. So I started asking him some questions, and so he's from a foreign country. He was a kickboxer, so he's had some jacked up body parts. Yeah, I think he's going to come here in a few weeks, so I don't want to tell it too much. And so anyway, so I prayed for him, and ends up getting, I don't know that he got healed, but he got major breakthrough. I don't want to exaggerate that it was healed, but there were some carpal tunnels and a jaw thing, and so some stuff's happening. Because he started off with, I don't believe in God. And I said, that's okay, he believes in you. I said, let me tell you what he wants to do here. So it's ministered to him, so he gets some breakthrough. So then he just starts opening up his life. And so they had a family situation where the sister-in-law died with some drugs and some prostitution stuff, and they were trying to scrape together to put the money for a funeral. And so I'm listening to the story, and I said, man, here's what I want to do. I went and got my checkbook, and I wrote him a check that helped towards the funeral. And so I just felt connected with him. He's crying, he's praying, why are you doing this? And I just said, listen, man, this is just God's heart. He wants to give you a picture of what it looks like. So we exchanged numbers, and so I told him, I said, I hope this doesn't come across weird. I think I'm supposed to go to the funeral. And so remember, this is a guy who says, I don't believe in God. I've traveled all around the world. I don't believe in God. And so this act of generosity awakens his conscience. I show up at the funeral. I sit in the back, and it was a rough funeral. I mean, it was like, the baby mamas and the baby daddies who are with their new partners yelling and cussing at each other. And I'm just watching this whole thing. Oh my gosh, there might be a fight. And, not my usual Sunday morning crowd. And so I'm just sitting there just enjoying myself. And person after person, hey, are you that guy? And I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, word is getting around. Now he's introducing me. This is my pastor. This is my pastor. His kids are coming up and sitting on my lap and playing with me. People are walking by and hugging me and introducing themselves to me. Guys, it wasn't thousands of dollars that awoke in his conscience. It was hundreds. My first priority is to be a giver. I give to the Lord's work, absolutely. My first priority, man, you give where you're fed. You don't go to Outback and pay Longhorn. Give where you're fed, unashamedly here. But we want to go beyond that in our generosity. So my number one priority is to be a giver. Give, invest, live on the rest. My second priority is to be an investor. Faithfulness in Jesus' parables was not just about giving. It was about stewarding the money for increase. I tell you what, man, I did not get this growing up. Faithfulness is all about give, 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 give. But the only person who heard well done before they entered the pearly gates was a guy who took money and invested it wisely and increased it. Yes. We've made people who make, you're just after money, you're just after this. Man, it's a spiritual cause to do business. Jesus said this, or Paul said this in Ephesians 4. He said, let the thief steal no longer, but let him work that he might have something to give. Man, what a spiritual pursuit. So a steward in the Bible was not someone who played it safe. I think a lot of people picture, I'm a good steward, I'm stingy. I'm barely letting anything through my fingers. I'm a steward. I'm stewarding this thing, okay? A steward was someone who put their money at risk for possible multiplication. So Chris Vaulton just did a Facebook post, actually back in February. I thought it was brilliant. Here it is. Quote, Jesus told two parables, the parable of the talents and the parable of the minas. Both of those stories were similar, where they were given an amount of money, and they took it and they multiplied it, and they were rewarded. And there were some who didn't do anything with it. They hid it, and we're going to find out what happened to them here in just a second. In both cases, he tells us what happened. Okay, I shouldn't have said. In both cases, the servants that took the money their Lord gave them, 1 talent equals about $30,000, 1 mina equals $500, and they made more money and were rewarded. In fact, 2 guys that did well with the minas were given authority over cities, which blows me away. Jesus says, listen, if you'll take care of this stuff in your hand, I'll give you the ability to shape culture over cities. Why do you think the enemy's fighting us on this thing so hard? In fact, the guys in both stories, okay, now this is where the story gets ugly. The guys in both stories who refused to take risks and invest their money, but instead buried it, were called wicked and lazy slaves. But wait, it gets even worse. Their money was taken away from them and given to the guys who already had the most money. Simply put, the rich got richer and the poor got poorer, or at least it looks that way from the outside. Yet from God's perspective, he wasn't trying to make the rich richer. He was simply distributing his wealth to the people who would invest it wisely. But God also took his money away from the lazy and worthless slaves. His words, not mine. See Matthew 25 and Luke 19. End quote. Some people think being a good steward is being cheap and stingy, but everything in the kingdom that is steward multiplies and increases. Those who played it safe and protected it were thrown into outer darkness. Give, invest, live on the rest. My first priority is to be a giver. My second priority is to be an investor. To be an investor means to be a good steward. Part of your stewardship is to invest for increase. My third priority is living. So give, save, live on the rest. That's my bread. The first 2 are my seed. I'm going to show you how that works here in just a second. The third one is my bread. Part of your stewardship is to enjoy the blessings of God that he's given you. The religious spirit would say, anytime you get something nice, you better give it away. Anytime you get something nice, you better give it away. Listen to 1 Timothy 6:17. As for the rich in this present age, he's talking to wealthy people. Ready for this? Charge them not to be haughty, nor to set their hopes on the uncertainty of riches, but on God. In other words, don't let the spirit of mammon, the same trust you learned in the wilderness, let that same trust happen to you here in the promised land. You ready? But trust on God, who richly provides us with everything to enjoy. God creates these things so that we can enjoy them. It's not religious, it's not materialistic to enjoy the car that you drive, to think that the clothes you wear are beautiful, to be refreshed in a vacation resort, that's pretty. You see what I'm saying? To invest in things. Listen, he's a good dad. So my son wanted to play the drums, and I bought him a drum set. If he were to turn around and to give away those drums, I wouldn't think, what a great kid. I've been thinking, man, I gave you those drums. I wanted you to enjoy them. I wanted them to, it really did something neat in your heart. Listen to Proverbs 10:22. The blessing of the Lord makes a person rich, and he adds no sorrow with it. I tell you what, gang, there's a way of pursuing wealth in this world that adds sorrow. You lose your family. Your kids are on drugs. Okay, but when you pursue it God's way, it adds no sorrow. The NIV says, the blessing of the Lord brings wealth. Again, Proverbs is full. We don't pursue money, we pursue God. We pursue adding massive value to people, but money will be attracted to us. And when it does, we need to know what to do. We're going to try to earn more and spend less, create this gap, fill up those buckets, and once we hit bucket 4, it becomes a wealth-building machine into paper assets, real estate, or business. We don't have time to go through all those. I'm just trying to give you a big picture. You're going to need to get some financial literacy. If you can't balance your checkbook, God's not going to trust you with millions. But when it gets quiet, it's either really good or really bad. Somehow we have to learn to enjoy what God provides and see that this provision is actually an expression of himself. So in the Old Testament, there was 3 tithes. I'm about to turn you into a tither. Are you ready for this? The first tithes were for the Levites to support the spiritual ministry of the land. Every 3 years, there was a tithe for the poor. There was a third tithe, very interesting. It was the tithe of the feasts. Let me read to you the tithe of the feast from Deuteronomy 14:26. I don't think I have it in your notes. And spend the money for whatever you desire, oxen or sheep or wine or strong drink, whatever your appetite craves, and you shall eat that there before the Lord and rejoice, you and your household. I just turned someone into a tither right there. Deuteronomy 14:26. Here's the picture. Is God's goodness comes upon me, and I'm not to just spend it on myself, I'm to recognize it, that it is his goodness coming upon me. You didn't just, hey, go blow your money, party it up, have a good time. No. You're doing it in such a way that it's in communion with him. Lord, I'm receiving this vacation as a gift from you. And Lord, as these waves lap over my toes, that there are kisses from a good God. You see the difference? So look at your notes there. I collapsed my budget down into these three categories. Give, which is seed, invest, seed, and bread. So I got the buckets in there, and I've got, rather than having 30, things for your housing, if your bread budget, your living, I collapsed it down to 7. Okay, so maybe that helps you, maybe not. So let's get to a budget plan. I'm going to actually give you some percentages to shoot for, okay? Steven De Silva, he's from Bethel. He's actually coming here in February. You guys are going to fall in love with this guy. And so someone already has. That's good. He comes up with this idea of base hits and a home run. I really like this. So he uses different terminology. He uses it differently, but I'm kind of taking mine with his ideas. So if you're like, where did he do this? Well, you're not going to find it, but you kind of can. Okay, there you go. So your first basic aim should be 10, 10, 80. So give 10%, invest 10%, live 80%. And here's why. I want you to look at that diagram 6.3. Hold out it again, okay? I learned this from Stephen. It's very powerful. Your seed is your giving and your investing, and you should match the two. So whatever you give and what you invest should be the same amount, and then you should live on what's left over. Okay? Give, invest, live on the rest. So I want you to see here, because remember, we looked at how to build half of the machine at 6.2, but here's 6.3, is your income's coming in, and so half of it's going to seed, half of it's going to bread, and then your seed is being split into giving and investing. Okay? So I already kind of peeked at this, but I feel like Christians have tried tithes and offering their way into prosperity, and that's only half the equation. Tithes and offering, tithes and offering, tithes and offering. Well, you can see that is seeding the heavens, but it's not seeding the earth. Let me read you that Malachi, also known as the Italian prophet Malachi. Let me read you that verse that I talked to you about. Bring the full tithe into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house, and thereby put me to the test, says the Lord of hosts. If I will not open the windows of heaven. I want you guys to underline, open windows of heaven. Open the windows of heaven for you and pour down for you a blessing until there is no more need. I will rebuke the devourer for you, so that it will not destroy, underline this, the fruits of your soil, underline your vine in the field, you shall not bear, says the Lord of hosts. Then all nations will call you blessed, for you will be a land of delight, says the Lord. I haven't heard anyone else teach this, but this kind of exploded in my heart. It's like the tithes and offerings open up the heavens, but if we haven't seeded anything on the earth, then there's not going to be any fruits in your soil and vines in your field for the rain to come and flourish and multiply. I don't know. I mean, maybe it's just a wow to me here. I don't know. But that to me was like, okay, this is one of those keys. This is one of those ancient paths. If you're not a giver, you're at 0, 0, 100. And so let me just give you a verse. Give and it will be given. It would be super frustrating if we had to wait for God to give first. Okay, I'll give when he's giving me something. That's not how it works in the kingdom. Give and then it will be given. Well, I don't have anything to give. Well, then you're not a sower, because he says he gives seed to the sower. If you've got nothing to give, it's because you're an eater. You're a consumer. The word consumer means to destroy, and what you're destroying is your ability to create wealth. How we doing? Okay? Hey, I wanted you to get your $10 worth here, okay? Talk about the undervalue of a lifetime here, my goodness. If you're a tither but not an investor, you're at 10, 0, 90. So you're seeding the heavens and the rain clouds are forming, but there's nothing invested on the earth for the rain clouds to rain on. So a 0, 10, 90 person is actually a person who's eating part of their seed, because part of their seed is supposed to be invested on the earth. Don't confuse your bread and your seed. If a farmer goes out and plants bread, it's going to be a long winter. But if a farmer eats all of his seed, it's short-term thinking. So what is second base? Second base is give 15, invest 15, live on 70. 15, 15, 70. Notice my giving and my investing are matched. Priority 1 is giving. Give, invest, live on the rest. Priority 2 is investing. You may be at 0, 1, 90. I don't know, or 1, 1, 98. I'm sorry, I said the wrong. 1, 1, 98. But here's what's going to happen. Over the years, it's going to get easier. It's going to get easier. Why? Because God is raining on your investment and it's multiplying. You're getting more streams and more things. It's going to be easier and easier to get these percentages. You may be looking at it now and going, you're crazy. I could never do this. Gang, if the government came and imposed a 20% tax tomorrow, you would find a way to make it work. You have got to find a way to live on 80%. You have got to find a way to live on 80% and begin to invest 10% into the heavens, 10% into the earth. Your 10% on the earth can be what you're using to go pay off debt. Okay, so you don't have to start investing right away. Remember, we're filling up those buckets. You can be using that extra 10%. Listen, if you're not putting a minimum of 5% extra towards debt, you're never going to get out of debt. Okay, you need to do this. And so I'm telling you, if the government said 20% tomorrow, you would figure out a way to make it work within a couple of weeks. I'm telling you, figure out a way to make it work in a couple of weeks. Don't sit through this training, have God do all this stuff in your heart, and go home and do nothing. Oh, there's homework? I don't like the word homework. Do you like the word perseverance? Do you like the word wealth? Do you like the word blessing? It's not going to happen sitting on your couch making declarations, marching around your checkbook 7 times, blowing the shofar over your wallet. Looking up into heaven like it's a giant slot machine, pulling the handles, yelling, money cometh. Stop that foolishness. It doesn't work. That's not how it works. You seed the heavens and you seed the earth with a good heart. You're co-laboring with God to create wealth. That's how it works. That we're going to talk about what a seed is in the next thing. That's exactly what you're doing. Oh, I got so much. Okay, third base. Third base is 20-20-60. This is a very generous giving and a very generous investing model. 20-20-60. You guys not see where I'm at? Look on your notes. Don't you have the bases there? Page 24? I put 24 at the bottom. Oh, yeah, sorry about that. So first was 10-10-80. Give 10, invest 10, live 80. Second base is 15-15-70. Just copy off someone next to you. Third base is 20-20-60. Again, that's a very generous investing, a very generous giving model. So what would a home run look like? Could be. I like that. Make up your own home run. Here's mine. 35-35-30. 35-35-30. Here's why that's a home run. Again, because I want to have enough that I'm investing that it continues to grow. That 35 for investing is delayed giving. It's going to become greater giving in the future. Okay, I've heard people, I want to live off of 10 and give away 90. Man, that's a beautiful dream. But I wonder how much more you could give over the years and pass down to your kids to give over the years if you had thought about it as seed and those things. I mean, I'm not trying to down anybody. Man, if someone's doing 90, you're doing way more than I am. And you should probably be teaching this class. These are just the thoughts from a guy who's got the mic. And I probably put 400 hours into this since June in these things. And so this, I think I'm right. Not that 400 hours gives it to me. I'm just saying, like this, I've spent a lot of time thinking and praying and sweating and dreaming and crying and complaining and talking. And so, gang, I can't even tell you how I'm excited I am for the church. I was going to teach this in January. I wanted to just give us a head start. I felt like we needed something to get our teeth around and to begin moving into this thing. But come January, we're taking a step every week. Every single week, we're taking a step. You're going to have to do something every single week with the Lord in partnership with this thing, and we're going to walk into this thing together. So, All right, wealth building diagram 6.4. Let's look at it one more time here. This is the full thing. Earning. You're going to earn more, spend less. Like I said, there's a whole thing on how to earn more. They got a thing on that. I want you to write underneath spending, write the word bread. Write the word bread under spending there. And see where the heavens clouds, I want you to draw it raining upon those assets. You can make a torrential downpour. You can have lightning. I don't care what you artists, just go crazy on this part. But I want you to see that as I'm seeding to the heavens, but I've got something planted on the earth. And so I feel, listen, I love the beauty of the matching the seed because it keeps my heart anchored in generosity. But listen, human wisdom would tell you, give less and invest more. That's called human wisdom. You see what I'm saying? Well, why don't you just give, 13% and, give 30% towards this because this gets us, you're taking out the God factor when you do that. That it's God who caused Abraham to prosper. God made Isaac richer and very wealthy. Like, wealth is attracted. God is the source. God's part is to bring wealth to you. Your part is to add massive value and to be generous and remain trusting. That's your part. Don't try to do God's part of trying to make wealth, trying to get wealth. God's part is to bring it to you. I'm not saying you're not going to have wisdom. You're not going to have to learn about some things you have to learn about business. You're not going to just get an idea and all of a sudden go gangbusters. There's a fruitful stage. You're going to have to walk through these things. They're not impossible, and you got a team here that'll love to walk it through with you, I'm sure. So get this picture. I want you to look at that picture, that wealth-building machine, okay? I love that name. I made it up. I'm not even sure if it's a real thing, but it is now. Get this picture. Look at it. When you save money and you put it into an investment, you are building a small army of soldiers that self-replicate into additional soldiers that grow until you have a massive army that supports you for a lifetime and invades our city and nations. Remember our definition of wealth? It was with substance. It was an army. It was resources. That's what we're talking about here. However, when you spend your money, you not only slaughter that one soldier, but you eliminate every soldier he would have duplicated over your lifetime. We started looking at the secret to wealth is that there's no secrets. We summarize it in 2 sentences. Make more than you spend and invest the difference wisely. That's what we focused on this time. Partner with God and adapt wealth building principles. Our final session, the next session, we're going to look at partner with God. The wealth building principles, the wealth building habits, that is in an appendix that you can do as your homework. Okay? So the activation is you need to decide to become an investor, not just a consumer. You need to, if you look at it, it's time to decide to become an investor, not just a consumer. You have to move from working for money to money working for you. To do this, you simply have to decide what percentage of your income you will set aside for you and your family. $40 a week saves you about $2,000 a year at 8% compounded interest over 40 years becomes $500,000. You double that to $100 a week, you got over $1 million. Okay, so that's the invest early, invest often type of thing there. So here's what I want you to do. There's no right answer, and you may not be ready to answer it, but you need to answer this at some point. And I would encourage you, match your seed to your giving. You guys good? See you in 7 minutes for our final session.